Vice President of the South African Association of Freight Forwarders, Mike Walkyn, joins us now. Good evening, Mike. We're talking about the situation at both the Richards Bay Port and the City of Durban Port. Containers out at sea, 71,000 containers, we understand, stuck at sea. We've seen the major backlogs in Richards Bay with the trucks backing up. The situation is quite urgent and majorly impactful. Before we get into the connections that we make between what's happening, GDP and unemployment, just give us your perspective tonight, bearing in mind everything you've heard and how plans have been designed to try and deal with these crises. How are you as an organization viewing this?
Thanks very much, Iman. Yeah, there's, as you know, a lot going on. It's a very sad situation because the first thing I must say is that we don't foresee any improvement much before March. So we've got a long route to travel, but at least there is now movement. So looking at, for example, Richards Bay, you've seen the pictures of the queues there. I suppose the President and the Minister going there today might have been a useful public relations exercise, but I certainly don't think it's going to accelerate the work that needs to be done. The reason I say that is that the prime cause of the trouble at Richards Bay is the dysfunctional rail line that leads from the coalfields down to the port. As a result of that, the port last year couldn't handle 20 million tons of coal that it should have handled at a time when world coal prices were at an all-time high. So you can imagine how much damage that did to the economy. The Minister and the President going there isn't going to fix the railway in a hurry. What we need is Transnet to be involved. And moving on from that, if you look at Durban, you asked about that. Yes, I actually think the 71,000 is a dual figure. It includes exports and imports, but they're all held up. And don't forget exports when you talk about this, because our export markets are heavily impacted. There will be losses, and those are losses to the fiscus as well. So we can go further down the coast. All the ports are impacted to one degree or another. All of that problem, or most of those problems, stem from a systemic breakdown of what's going on in Transnet. So productivity is at an all-time low in the ports. The cargo is there needing to be moved, and the ports aren't able to move fast enough. Now, recently, since the change of management in Transnet, we are getting much more positive signs. We have a commitment that by the end of December, the orders for the necessary equipment and refurbishment and maintenance will have been placed. And that's why I'm thinking about March, because having placed the orders, you still have to get the stuff.
Yeah, and we're talking about major delays, Mike. Sorry to jump in there, but because I want to cover quite a bit of ground in quite a short space of time.
Sure.
We often don't make the connection. For those of us who are not in this industry, don't understand how these things work. We don't make the connection between cargo that's stuck at sea to things like jobs and GDP. Could you simply explain that connection to our viewers?
Yes. First of all, on the subject of jobs, as we speak, there are jobs being lost in the trucking industry because they can't get enough work to keep themselves afloat because the cargo isn't there. There are downstream losses of jobs as well. I mean, obviously, for every trucker, and a lot of them are SMMEs, owner drivers. For everyone that goes out of business, there are probably about 6 people without life support, if you want to call it that. And that cascades right through the logistics chain. As far as GDP is concerned, well, the governor was on the radio just, I think, an hour or so ago, and I think he made a clear point about how the supply chain logistics impacts on the GDP of the country. And there was a time, when he used to say, well, our GDP has been depressed by the problem of Eskom. Now he's also saying it's been depressed by the Transnet problem.
Yeah.
In our view, the logistics problem and the Transnet issue is in the long term a much bigger problem than Eskom. It has to be fixed. It has to be fixed urgently. We as an association have for quite some months now been working hard with government, and that's why there's a National Logistics Crisis Committee. And more recently, and I think it'll come out tomorrow or thereabouts, we have the roadmap, which is supposed to tell us exactly where we go. Now, if that is followed, and if the money is made available, then yes, we can improve.
Yeah.
But, the governor the Treasury, not keen on giving the money out. So there's that hurdle to be overcome.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, actually, in terms of the medium-term budget policy statement, would there be a credible plan, but also more importantly, is there going to be budget to finance that? You were hinting in the beginning, about the cost to business, quite high, reputational damage, you've got the supply chain disruptions, you've already explained a little bit about the impact on imports and exports, but when major companies, the likes of Maersk, for example, no longer want some of our ports, Cape Town as a case in point is a port of call, what are the likely long-term impacts to business?
Sure, I mean, that's a very good example, and it's not just Maersk, by the way, but they're going to Mauritius, and they're going to feed everything in or out from there. It's smaller vessels, because they can't afford the disruption of their line schedules to the extent that they have it now. What does that do? Especially, you mentioned the Cape, which is where I am. We're coming right into the fruit export season now. The stuff has a limited shelf life. And what we're doing here is extending its stay in a container for about 3 weeks. That leads to deterioration, loss of product value, and loss of price. It also leads to reputational damage where importers in the foreign markets are going to say, wait, do we have to carry on buying from there? And the chances are we'll lose business. Now, when you do that, look down the chain or up the chain in the agricultural industry, and you look at the hundreds of thousands of people employed there, and there are serious threats to their well-being and livelihood. There are also, and we don't always understand this, serious threats even more so now to Transnet because they're not making the revenue they should be making.
Thank you so much, Mike, because what you've done tonight is, even in these short few minutes, talked about why this is not just your business, but everybody's business in South Africa who's interested in growing our economy and making sure that there are jobs and we don't lose any more. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. The Vice President of the South African Association of Freight Forwarders, Mike Walkyn.